Hi, I'm Sophia, a 26-year-old from a charming tiny town in Italy. My life has always been simple, just like the narrow streets and stone houses that make up my hometown. I grew up surrounded by family, good friends, and plenty of old traditions. Everyone in town knows each other, every shopkeeper, every street artist, every neighbor. I always thought my life was laid out perfectly. I'd study, marry my childhood love, and settle down here in my little town with the smell of fresh pasta in the air and the gentle sound of church bells every Sunday. But fate has a funny way of surprising us. I'd been engaged to Marco, a man I'd known for years. Marco was sweet, kind, and safe, and everyone thought we made the perfect match. My mother adored him. She'd often whisper to me with a smile, "Sophia, Marco is every mother's dream for her daughter." But just 1 month before our wedding, Marco called me. It was late evening, and I was in my room, dreaming about wedding plans and what my dress would look like. I picked up, expecting to chat about our honeymoon plans, but Marco's voice sounded strange, tense, almost cold. "Sophia," he said quietly, "I don't think we should get married. I'm not ready for this." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. I was silent for a moment, clutching the phone as if it might bring him back to me. "What? Marco, what are you saying?" He paused, and then I heard him sigh. "I don't know how to explain, but I can't do this. I need to find myself. I'm sorry." He hung up, leaving me staring blankly at the wall. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a wave of confusion, anger, and sadness. The tears came quickly, and I felt as if my world had crumbled. I kept thinking, why me? What did I do wrong? For days I stayed in bed, not wanting to talk to anyone, not even my best friend, Clara. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marco's face. My family tried to comfort me, but nothing they said made the pain go away. My dreams felt shattered, and I felt lost. Then one morning, while lying in bed, a wild idea popped into my mind. I remembered the honeymoon tickets we'd booked for Paris. Why not go alone? It sounded absurd even to me. A solo honeymoon? But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like the right thing to do. I needed to escape, to find myself, to do something bold and completely unexpected. I told my parents, and at first, they looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Sophia alone? In Paris?" my mother asked, worried. But I was determined. "Mama, I need to do this," I replied softly. I packed my bags, filled with both excitement and nervousness. This wasn't just a trip, it was a journey to rediscover myself. The airport was a whole new world for me. I'd never traveled alone before, and everything felt so unfamiliar. I boarded the plane and settled into my seat by the window. I looked out, watching the tiny houses and roads disappear as we soared into the sky. It felt symbolic, as if I were leaving my old life behind. The lady sitting next to me noticed my nervousness and gave me a kind smile. "First time flying alone?" she asked. I nodded, and we began to talk. Her name was Marie, and she was from France. She was a traveler, an adventurer, someone who'd seen places I could only dream of. Her stories about distant lands and beautiful mountains fascinated me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt excitement rather than sadness. She looked at me and said, "Sophia, you're about to have an incredible journey. Remember, Paris isn't just a city. It's a place to find magic, adventure, and maybe a little bit of yourself." Her words stayed with me as we landed in Paris. Stepping out of the airport, I felt a rush of emotions. The city was alive, busy people rushing past, taxis honking, and the aroma of fresh coffee and pastries drifting through the air. It was overwhelming and thrilling at the same time. I'd never felt so many emotions at once. My hotel was in Montmartre, a charming neighborhood filled with narrow, cobbled streets, cozy cafes, and artists painting on the sidewalks. I checked in and looked out of my hotel room window. The view was beautiful. The rooftops of Paris, with their iconic chimneys, stretched out in front of me. I took a deep breath and thought, "Sophia, this is the beginning of something new." The next morning, I decided to visit the Eiffel Tower. I dressed up, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. The walk to the Eiffel Tower was magical. Everything felt different from back home. The streets were lined with little bakeries, and people sat at outdoor cafes sipping coffee and chatting. When I reached the tower, I looked up, mesmerized by its size and beauty. I felt tiny standing there, surrounded by tourists from all over the world. It was then that a young girl with a red balloon ran up to me, her mother chasing after her. She looked up at me with a huge smile, handing me her balloon as a gift. Her mother laughed and said in a warm French accent, "She likes you. You must have a kind heart." I thanked her, holding the balloon and feeling my heart lighten. That simple gesture reminded me of the kindness and warmth people could show to a stranger. I watched the Eiffel Tower, feeling a strange comfort in knowing that I was just one person in this huge, beautiful world with so much to discover. I continued exploring Paris, and that afternoon I stopped at a small, colorful cafe. As I sipped on a delicious cup of cappuccino, I heard a cheerful voice next to me. "Bonjour, may I join you?" I looked up to see a young woman with bright red hair and a huge smile. Her name was Elise, a local artist who painted portraits on the streets of Montmartre. She seemed so carefree, laughing as she introduced herself. "You're new here, aren't you?" she asked, noticing my wide-eyed curiosity. I laughed and nodded, and soon Elise was telling me stories about Paris. Funny stories, wild stories, and stories that made me dream. She told me about the best places to see, the hidden spots tourists don't know about, and her love for painting. Elise became my first friend in Paris. She promised to show me around and introduce me to her friends. I felt grateful to have met someone so kind, who seemed genuinely interested in helping me experience the city. That evening, I returned to my hotel with a heart full of new memories. I knew this was only the beginning, but already I felt a little piece of myself coming back. After my first day in Paris, everything felt like a dream. My friend Elise had promised to show me the real Paris, so we made plans to meet the next morning. I woke up early, dressed in my best outfit, and practically skipped out of my hotel, excited for what lay ahead. Elise greeted me with a grin. "Sophia, if you're going to truly experience Paris, you need a makeover." She dragged me to a tiny boutique where the shop owner, a flamboyant older man named Pierre, looked me up and down and said, Mon Dieu, we have work to do. Pierre wasted no time. He handed me outfit after outfit, and soon I was trying on the most ridiculous, extravagant French styles you could imagine. One outfit made me look like I belonged in a 1970s rock band, while another felt like it was straight out of a royal costume party. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. Finally, Pierre picked out a classic, elegant dress, perfect for a Parisian evening. "Ah, now you are truly magnifique," he said, admiring his work. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt different. It wasn't just the dress. It was a confidence I hadn't felt before. Feeling glamorous in my new dress, Elise and I decided to have dinner at a chic restaurant. It was the kind of place I'd only seen in movies, with waiters in bow ties, candlelit tables, and people speaking in low, sophisticated tones. Elise ordered escargot, which I had never tried before. "It's a French delicacy," she insisted with a mischievous smile. When the plate arrived, I stared at the tiny snails, feeling queasy. But I wanted to be adventurous, so I took a deep breath and tried one. As soon as I bit into it, I felt the strangest sensation, a mix of garlic, butter, and slime. My eyes widened and I struggled to swallow, desperately grabbing for my glass of water. Elise burst out laughing. "You should have seen your face, Sophia. Priceless." I laughed along, realizing it wasn't about the food. It was about letting go of my fears and trying new things, no matter how strange they seemed. After dinner, Elise took me to a small, crowded jazz club tucked away in a quiet alley. The place was alive with music and energy, the band playing upbeat tunes as people danced and laughed. Elise grabbed my hand and dragged me to the dance floor. I'd never been a great dancer, but that night I didn't care. Elise and I twirled and spun, laughing until our cheeks hurt. At one point, a handsome stranger twirled me around, and for a moment I felt like I was in a movie. We danced with a carefree spirit, like nothing else mattered. When we finally collapsed into our seats, breathless and sweaty, Elise raised her glass. "To new beginnings, Sophia." "To new beginnings," I replied, smiling. The next day, while wandering through Montmartre, I encountered a mime performing on a busy street corner. He was incredibly talented, miming invisible walls, climbing ladders, and pretending to pull a rope that wasn't there. The crowd was enchanted, laughing and clapping at his every move. Suddenly he looked right at me, raised an eyebrow, and beckoned me to join him. I froze, shaking my head, but the crowd cheered, and before I knew it, I was pulled into his act. The mime pretended to hand me a giant bouquet of invisible flowers, and I played along, pretending to smell them. Then, to my surprise, he mimed that the flowers had thorns, causing me to wince and shake my hand dramatically. The crowd burst into laughter, and I found myself laughing too. It was silly, embarrassing, and absolutely wonderful. As my days in Paris continued, I met all kinds of people, each with their own quirks and charm. One afternoon, as I was strolling near the Seine River, a man approached me. He was carrying a guitar, his hair messy but charming, and he looked at me with a grin. "Excuse me, mademoiselle," he said with a thick accent. "I am Jean-Luc, and I am looking for a wife. Are you interested?" I burst out laughing, thinking it was a joke, but Jean-Luc looked at me seriously, holding his guitar as if he were about to sing me a love song. I decided to play along. "Oh, really?" I asked, trying to keep a straight face. "And why should I marry you, Jean-Luc?" He strummed his guitar and began to sing in French, words I couldn't fully understand, but the melody was sweet and filled with playful charm. People passing by stopped to listen, and I felt a mix of amusement and delight. When he finished, he took a dramatic bow and I clapped, laughing. "Well, Jean-Luc, I'm flattered," I replied, "but I think I have to keep exploring Paris first." He shrugged with a smile. "Ah, the one that got away," he sighed, walking off with a wink. On my last evening in Paris, I decided to visit the Eiffel Tower one more time. I sat on a bench nearby, watching the tower sparkle against the night sky, reflecting on everything I had experienced. I realized how much I had changed in such a short time. The sadness and confusion I had felt back home now seemed distant, almost silly. I had danced, laughed, and made friends with strangers. I had faced my fears, tried new things, and even pretended to marry a charming French stranger. Most importantly, I had learned to be happy with myself, even when things didn't go as planned. As the Eiffel Tower shimmered with lights, I whispered to myself, "Sophia, you are stronger and braver than you ever thought." The next morning, as I boarded my flight back to Italy, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known before. Paris had given me memories, friends, and confidence I could carry forever. I knew that going home didn't mean going back to my old life. It meant starting a new chapter, one where I could be whoever I wanted to be. When I landed and stepped off the plane, my family was waiting for me with warm hugs. I shared my stories, making them laugh with tales of my silly encounters and crazy adventures. I saw pride in their eyes, not because I had traveled alone, but because I had found myself. And that was the beginning of a new journey for me. I had gone to Paris heartbroken and lost, but I came back feeling whole, happy, and ready for whatever life had in store.